About 12 minutes ago, the aircraft carrying Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor left Chinese airspace, and they're on their way home. They boarded at about 7:30 Ottawa time, along with Dominic Barton, Canada's ambassador to China. These two men have gone through an unbelievably difficult ordeal. For the past 1,000 days, they have shown strength, perseverance, resilience, and grace, and we are all inspired by that.
And as the two Michaels left Chinese airspace 12 minutes before the Prime Minister addressed the country, you're looking at a chartered Air China plane taking off from YVR a short time ago. Believed to be on board as a passenger who leaves this country, a free woman, Meng Wanzhou, returning to China after 3 years under house arrest here. And with that, as we said, Canadians Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, we've learned moments ago from the Prime Minister, are also on their way back to Canada. Earlier today, Meng Wanzhou struck a deal with U.S. prosecutors. A BC judge then ended the extradition case against her. And moments after that, the Huawei executive spoke outside BC Supreme Court in Vancouver, thanking Canada for its commitment to justice.
I also appreciate the Crown for their professionalism and the Canadian government for upholding the rule of law.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Anita is off tonight. In just the past few minutes, as we've seen, it has been an extraordinary day in a legal saga that has embroiled Canada, China, and the U.S. for 3 years. Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou now free and believed to have left the country, as we just saw. Our Jason Proctor spent the afternoon in that Vancouver courtroom and joins us now to explain what happened then. Jason, you've covered Meng's case for 3 years. Let's focus on that. How did it end like this?
Well, so basically, Dan, she appeared in a Vancouver courtroom this afternoon. The Crown said that it was withdrawing the request for her extradition that was made by the United States. That all related back to an earlier appearance that she made via telephone today to a courtroom in Brooklyn, where the U.S. announced that they had entered into a deferred prosecution agreement with Meng, who pled not guilty to these charges, but ultimately sort of accepted responsibility for the allegations against her. The U.S. is going to dismiss the charges in time, but as you say, it's sort of set in motion this remarkable turn of events. There was hugging outside the courtroom. There was a lot of emotion from Meng, and you know, she sort of came out and thanked, as you said, her lawyers, and also spoke directly to Canadians for the first time.
And she apologized, in fact, to the Canadian people.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the Honourable Associate Chief Justice Holmes for her fairness in the whole legal proceedings. I also appreciate the Crown for their professionalism and the Canadian government for upholding the rule of law.
Jason, as we said, she apologized to the Canadian people. She seemed grateful, gracious outside of court. What do you make of that, having covered the case today?
Yeah, you know, it was interesting to see her. There's never any suggestion, to be honest, from anybody that's dealt with her that she's been anything but gracious, though you have to imagine this has been an ordeal for her as well. We've heard at times how difficult it's been. You know, she's worn an ankle bracelet for all of this time. Her movements have been limited. She also spoke for the first time about the toll this has taken on her life.
Over the past 3 years, my life has been turned upside down. It was disruptive time for me as a mother, a wife, and a company executive. But I believe every cloud has a silver lining. It really was an invaluable experience in my life.
Oh, sorry, I missed that.
It's all right. It's a busy news day. Go ahead, Jason.
No, as you heard there, Meng Wanzhou very emotional, talking for the first time about what this has meant for her, all of this. You know, the big question, though, which we've also seen resolved in the last few minutes, it just gives you an idea of how fast everything is occurring here, with regards to the two Michaels, who now we learn are on their way back to Canada and have in fact cleared Chinese airspace on a plane that left not long ago. And so all just a remarkable turn of events within the space of hours.
Very fast-moving day after 3 years of back and forth turmoil between the United States, China, and Canada. Jason Proctor, thank you so much for your coverage today and throughout the years.
Thank you, Dan.
And we're going to have much more on the Meng Wanzhou story coming up and take a look back at how we got here and what happens next. To other news now, hundreds of people turned out this morning to help search for a Squamish teen who was last seen on Tuesday. RCMP and Squamish Search and Rescue organized the big public search. More now from our John Hernandez and the growing worries for that missing teen.
It didn't take long for the word to get out. By 10 a.m., more than 700 people volunteered to help try to find missing 15-year-old Richie Stelmach.
Very concerned. It's a young boy. I can only imagine, what he's dealing with right now, what must be going on for him and his family, of course, too.
My first thought was, if this was my child, I would want everybody who's got the time and capacity to come out and help.
Stelmach was last seen Tuesday night before he went to bed. He was gone the next morning. His parents reported him missing just after 7 a.m. Stelmach is believed to have left his home on this street, even though his family says that's out of character. Crews have canvassed the neighborhood extensively and have since broadened out the search area.
It's not knowing why Richie left or what his intention was for leaving, and frankly, it doesn't matter. Squamish SAR was asked by the RCMP to assist in the search, and our only goal is to bring Richie home safe to his family.
The search areas that we're assigning are large.
Volunteers were divided into large groups and sent to different neighborhoods.
What we're looking for is any sort of clue in the direction of travel. So, can we find a security camera? Can we find something that's out of place somewhere to give us a clue as to which way this young man went?
They checked streets and yards, looking through sheds and bushes. Some people overwhelmed by the sheer number of possible locations.
There's a lot of places, like all of these are just like neighborhoods, but if I was a kid and I was afraid, there's so many places to burrow.
Despite the effort, there's still no sign of the teen, but the search did free up other crews to tackle more challenging terrain, and they will continue through the weekend. Anyone who saw Stelmach or has any information is asked to contact police. John Hernandez, CBC News, Squamish.
A tragic late-night crash in Nanaimo has killed a road paver and badly injured a flagger.
There's indication that the driver did not stop for the flaggers and continued into the site where the flagger was struck, then a second individual was struck.
Police say alcohol and speed are likely factors in that crash that shut down the Trans-Canada Highway overnight. Crews were paving the highway around 12:30 when they say a woman driving a car crashed into them. The crew member died on scene and the flagger was taken to hospital with serious injuries. The driver was detained by police and questioned. The highway was shut down in both directions and only reopened at 7 this morning. 3 Vancouver police officers have been charged with assault after the arrest of a cyclist 4 years ago. BC's police watchdog investigated the 2017 arrest that left the cyclist with serious injuries. One officer has been charged with assault causing bodily harm, the other 2 with assault. The cyclist fled after being spotted without a helmet, lights, and reflectors. Vancouver Police Constables Brandon Blue, Bo Spencer, and Gregory Jackson are set to be in court on October 25th. The province says 80% of people who are now eligible are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. But the 7-day rolling average of COVID cases in BC is still a bit concerning. The CBC's Justin McElroy has been our COVID data expert throughout this pandemic. Justin, the number of cases were in a bit of a holding pattern last week, Where are we at now?
Still a bit of a holding pattern, Dan. So it was 743 cases in British Columbia announced today. That's high. Fridays are always high, however. And when you look at the rolling average of cases over the last week, that's that yellow line right there. It's gone down a little bit, about 5% over the course of this week. You take a look at the red line, that's active cases. It's been bumpy for the past 2 or 3 weeks due to data corrections in different health regions. So the good news, that line isn't going up anymore. It's plateaued. The bad news is that we're still not seeing that significant reduction in transmission that we really need to be seeing for people to be safe across this province.
Now, there have been questions about the government's daily hospitalization counts. The calculations around who is deemed infectious or not. Some reporters have put health officials on the defensive there. What more do we know that?
Yeah, for the entire pandemic, the province has measured hospitalizations a little bit differently than a lot of other provinces, in that once you are no longer infected with COVID, you are taken off of the list of hospitalizations, even if you are still physically in hospital. So today what happened was they gave a one-day total of how many people that is right now. And if you take a look at the chart, the red line is active hospitalizations. That's been going up and up for the past few weeks because of the fourth wave. It started to slow down a little bit, but that blue dot right there, that's the extra 160 or so people that the government acknowledged today are still in hospital that have been not showing any symptoms, but they're still taking up beds. They're still putting an incredible strain on the system right now. And you can see it's about a 50% bump. So when you hear nurses and doctors, frontline people talk about the incredible strain 18 months in, that ungiven figure by the government most days is a big reason why.
Now, finally, when it comes to schools, we hadn't seen a serious rise in cases in children under 10 last week. Is that still the case?
And unfortunately not. And we've seen this in province after province, in state after state in America, that a couple weeks after schools are in session, we've seen lots of places that number in people under 10 go up. And it's happened again here. You see, over the course of the entire pandemic, about 6% of all cases have been in people under 10. The last week, more than double that, 14%. And of course, as we saw, the total number of cases in BC went down this week. So it was a good news in a lot of age brackets, but for people under 10, they can't get vaccinated. They're all in schools right now. This is going to be an ongoing concern for the government. They point out, of course, that the vast majority of people under 10 who get COVID don't need to be hospitalized. However, it's still a small number that do. And if the total number of cases among children go up, that number in hospital also likely to go up as well.
Yes, and one school has already been closed because of an outbreak. The CBC's Justin McElroy. Thanks very much. And another outbreak to tell you about. In just the last hour, Fraser Health declared an outbreak at Maple Ridge Christian School. 32 positive cases that have been identified among staff and students at that independent school. The health authorities says the school will stay open for in-person instruction for grade 6 students and up. Over the last 2 weeks, enforcement of BC's COVID vaccine card program has been mainly left to businesses, and staff say they're taking the brunt of customers' frustrations.
There is a vocal minority who are still maintaining a persistent problem for us. I mean, if by now you don't understand that we're legally obliged to follow these public health orders, and you're yelling at a service worker is not going to get you anywhere. If you don't know that by now, I'm not sure how else to explain this to you.
Some people are refusing to show a vaccine card and instead decide to argue with staff. Pubs and eateries have even been forced to call police. Adding to the frustrations, there are still about 60 businesses across the industry that flat out refuse to follow the new rules. You can call it an annual migration this time of year. BC snowbirds pack their suitcases, fill up the car, and get ready to head south to escape our colder winter months. But just like last year, 2021 is anything but typical. Janella Hamilton now on how people are still trying to get south despite COVID border restrictions.
Absolute frustration is what it is.
Wendy Cabin and her husband Jeff are worried with the U.S. land border closures now extended until at least October 21st. They may not make it down to their Arizona property for the second year in a row. The retired couple has been traveling to Mesa, Arizona for more than 14 years. Last year, due to COVID-19 restrictions, they were not able to use their property, a property they are still paying for.
It works out to probably around 12,000 Canadian that was wasted last year.
On Monday, U.S. President Joe Biden announced the land borders will remain closed to non-essential visitors. The ban, however, does not apply to air travel.
I think the biggest problem for snowbirds is not understanding why you can fly but you can't drive.
A frustration felt by snowbirds across BC. According to the Canadian Snowbird Association, 70% of snowbirds travel with their vehicle.
As I hear from many of our snowbirds, it's much safer for them to be in their vehicles driving across the border rather than having to go through airports.
It's a concern for Camilla Labine, who says her family has to travel down south every year due to her husband's medical reasons.
We just can't live here in the winter. It's too cold and my husband gets very, very sick.
This year, Labine had hoped to drive down with their dogs in their camper van. It's still possible, in a way, if you get creative.
They might be able to ship their RVs down there and then fly into the U.S. That's an option, but again, that's a pretty costly option for them to exercise.
Jade McElroy is the VP of Bid Buy Importers. Normally, they ship commercial cargo for businesses, but due to the land border closures, they are now helping snowbirds get their vehicles or RVs across the border.
When we saw how many people needed to get across and wanted to get across, we have a website, and the inquiries just flew in with people that were like, can you just get my car across the border?
It's an option some BC snowbirds are saying is just too expensive.
They don't have like $1,500 to $2,000 to shell out.
So for now, many who want to head south are still anxiously waiting, hoping that in November the border reopens. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Two BC ridings too close to call after Monday's federal election have now been decided. Liberal Wilson Miawa's unseated longtime Conservative incumbent Alice Wong in Richmond Centre. And after one of the tightest races in the country, Liberal Talib Nur Mohammed has been declared the winner in Vancouver Granville. Nur Mohammed edged out NDP candidate Anjali Appadurai by just 436 votes. There's still one riding left to be called in BC, though. Results for Nanaimo Ladysmith are expected this weekend. Climate protesters gathered in Vancouver today, calling for action from the newly re-elected Liberal government.
This election has been a key turning point for change. Now more than ever, we need climate justice.
So that my son and younger generations will have a planet that's safe to live on.
To actually meet their promises they've said and do more than that.
The youth-led rally took place at Jack Poole Plaza in concert with dozens of worldwide events. It's part of Greta Thunberg's Fridays for Future climate strike movement. The crowd called on the government to end subsidies for the oil and gas industry. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us with our first look at the forecast. Joe, another lovely day. And we wait for the weekend.
Yes. But I think we can hold this for at least half the weekend. It is going to be a remarkable switch between Saturday and Sunday. But yes, if you enjoyed today, almost summer-like afternoon highs, lots of blue sky, crisp morning temperatures, you got it for one more day. Take a look at the current temperatures out there. We are still mild even as we head into the evening. 16 for YVR right now, hanging on to a 23 out towards Abbotsford. I think the South Coast, we're looking at a 2 to 3 degree bump up tomorrow. So tomorrow, the peak of the heat before that cold front gets to us. And that is what you're seeing on the satellite right now, bringing continued rain to central and northern coastal sections. The rainfall warnings have finally ended, leaving behind over 140 millimeters at Prince Rupert Airport. That system is weakening, but that is what's headed to us for Sunday. But let me get you through a fine-looking Saturday until then. I know we had a few clouds roll in this afternoon. Those will clear out overnight. So temperatures coming down to the low double digits. By early Saturday morning, we're looking at another blue sky start with those lovely wispy high cirrus. By the afternoon, we'll see more of those ultracumulus. So those mid sort of puffy clouds. And then, Dan, Saturday overnight, it's all rain. And I'll take you through it as we head full on into the fall season now, beginning second half of the weekend.
That sounds good, Joe. And now the fall season is officially underway because we've crossed that autumnal equinox. Didn't have to look that up. But, Joe, we will not soon forget the summer of 2021, will we?
That's right. From wildfires across the province to the deadly heat dome, we will see more seasons like the summer we've had. So that has governments thinking about how to prepare for the next one.
570 deaths across the province during the late June heat dome were directly connected to the extreme heat. And now officials want to know how they can better prepare for the next one.
Air conditioning is going to have to become part of our normal way of life in British Columbia. It's hard to contemplate how much money we're going to have to spend in order to get to where we have to get so that people aren't at risk in their own homes.
New Westminster Councillor Patrick Johnstone was one of several government officials and provincial scientists part of a special heat dome workshop during the recent 2021 Union of BC Municipalities Convention. And I was asked to provide meteorological insight into this rare 1 in 1,000 year event, an event that was made 150 times more likely to occur because of human-caused climate change. By the year 2050, this could be a 1 in 5 to 10 year event. For many of us, we will see another heat dome in our lifetime. The province also released preliminary results about who was affected the hardest.
It was lower income people. It was people, of course, without air conditioning, people who lived in neighborhoods with more concrete and less trees. It was more seniors than others. And it was very much people who were living alone.
A lot of people lost their lives in private residences.
Dick said while rapid action has already begun when it comes to hiring additional emergency responders, solutions are needed on all scales. From taking tips from hot countries around the world, like adding shutters and trees to our most vulnerable buildings, to the big ones, like the daunting task of getting air conditioners to people's homes. This was the first of many conversations, because even for Ashcroft, a place people come to for the heat, this can't happen again the way it did.
The time to start planning for a heat wave is not when you hear from Environment Canada that one is coming in a week. The time to start planning is now.
Johanna Wagstaffe, CBC News, Vancouver.
And Dan, I'll continue to follow this story closely. Many more conversations to be had, but interesting that the response needs to be very different for urban versus rural, and it all needs to be ramped up. So I'll be keeping you posted.
And we're facing some big costs ahead. Johanna, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for joining us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. I'm Dan Burritt, filling in for Anita Bath tonight. If you're not already doing so, you can always watch our program live on our free app, CBC Gem. You can also watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. COVID knows no borders, so why are people in rural Alberta so reluctant to get vaccinated? We're going to take you to an area outside Lethbridge after this. Saskatchewan now leads the country as the worst COVID-19 hotspot. And as the CBC's Omaira Issa reports, it's leading to frustration and hopelessness among officials, hospitals, and patients.
Steve Turnquist is constantly in excruciating pain and can barely walk.
It's a pain that is just agonizing and there all the time. It wakes you up.
He needs a hip replacement. After 13 months on a wait list, there was hope. His surgery was finally scheduled, but now COVID-19 dashed that hope. He spends his days crocheting, counting the hours.
I don't know when I'm going to get a hip. I need a hip. And our hospitals are right full right now. Everything is getting pushed off all over the place, and we're not getting the health care that we need.
Saskatchewan's healthcare system is under severe stress. Today, again, more than 500 new cases and record numbers in hospitals and ICUs. Organ donations have been halted. The impact on non-COVID patients who need surgeries is devastating.
It's tough. Like we feel for our patients who might be they might be feel somewhat abandoned in the community.
Amid criticism this week, Premier Scott Moe singled out Northern First Nations for low COVID-19 vaccination rates.
It should be, how can we help the northern communities? What can we do to work together?
Moe also suggested doctors should do more to educate the public to boost vaccination rates, sparking more frustration.
We were pretty caught off guard and kind of dumbfounded. Many physicians and other healthcare workers have really stepped up.
Meanwhile, Turnquist and others like him can only watch in pain as Saskatchewan's situation worsens. Omaira Issa, CBC News, Regina.
Alberta is as close as it's been to starting triage protocols in its hospitals. Doctors are already rationing care, but Alberta Health still hopes it can avoid the worst-case scenario. As Travis McEwen shows us, efforts are now underway to prevent that from happening.
Despite Alberta Health Services insisting official triage protocols have not been brought into effect, some Alberta hospitals are using portions of the triage protocol. For example, critically ill COVID-19 patients should be sent to the intensive care units, but many ICUs are filling up, so some of those patients are remaining in main wards.
Patients that get admitted to the hospital, and then after a couple of days, they continue to deteriorate further and further and further, needing more oxygen and more care and getting sicker. When we were normally functioning, we would have transferred that patient to the ICU, but now we're continuing to carry on managing them on our hospital wards as best we can until they get to the point where they're so critically ill that we are forced to intervene.
It comes as the province has experienced record ICU admissions. As of this afternoon, the province's ICUs are operating at 83% surge capacity. To bring in triage protocols, the threshold is 90%. One of the reasons why hospitals have been able to keep up is grim.
It's tragic that we are only able to keep pace with these sort of numbers because in part some of our ICU patients have passed away. And this reality has a deep and lasting impact on our ICU teams.
The province is still in discussion with the Canadian Armed Forces for assistance. It's ready to deploy 8 ICU nurses along with air transportation that could fly patients anywhere across Canada. The how and when is still being discussed. Travis McEwen, CBC News, Edmonton.
In rural communities, there's a continued push to get more people vaccinated. Even the recent rollout of Alberta's vaccine passport is playing out very differently in some parts of that province. As Joel Dryden reports, in the county of 40 Mile, the first dose rate is 44%.
In the small Alberta hamlet of Skiff, Cade Hollingsworth and 2 of his co-workers are waiting for a grain car to arrive. It gives them a chance to talk about the pandemic, which Hollingworth says has been a different experience in rural centers compared to urban centers.
I'm not sure. I guess they probably think of us as like country hicks that don't know what's going on, and maybe to some degree we don't know, like I said, what's going on, but from what we see, what is the point, I guess?
Just 20 minutes down the road from Skiff, the conversation around vaccines and anti-vaxxers continues in the community of Foremost.
With everyone around us, you know, we're a massive farming community. We all
kind of just do our thing and go on.
Many express feelings of distrust when it comes to government and health officials. Others say they feel mass media has sensationalized the pandemic.
And then you've got the groups that think it's a dark web conspiracy theory. Well, you're going to read what you're going to read on the internet, and if you're not, I guess, fluent enough to check the facts out that you're reading further, then that's on you.
Health officials say the remoteness of communities like those in 40 Mile County doesn't insulate them from the spread of COVID-19 and its potentially deadly effects.
Especially the Delta variant of COVID-19 doesn't spare anybody. And very few human beings are an island unto themselves, living in their own house and their own yard.
But in the meantime, for some business owners trying to follow the COVID-19 rules while keeping their heads above water, the frequent implementations and pullbacks of restrictions are frustrating. At Bobby's Bar and Restaurant, owner Charlene Rossi says she's tried to do everything she can to keep her community safe. Rossi took over running the place in June after the bar's longtime owner, Bobby Prest, passed away from lung cancer earlier this year.
He built this right from the ground up, this place. I don't want to let it go down, and you know, that's makes me kind of want to fight even harder to keep it going for him.
That fight and the conversation around it is being held all across the county right now and looks certain to continue for many weeks to come. Joel Dryden, CBC News, 40 Mile County.
U.S. President Joe Biden announced the expanded rollout of booster shots for millions in his country already fully vaccinated with Pfizer's COVID vaccine.
Those eligible include, in addition to meeting the requirement of 6 months after the second shot, those people are 65 years or older, adults 18 and over with certain underlying health conditions like diabetes and obesity, and those who are at increased risk of COVID-19 because of where they work or where they live, like healthcare workers, teachers, grocery store workers.
Biden also pledged to get his third shot. The president also appealed to the more than 70 million Americans who have not gotten even one shot to get vaccinated. The rollout for boosters applies to people who've had 2 doses of Pfizer at least 6 months earlier. Moderna's application for boosters is still awaiting FDA approval, while Johnson & Johnson has not filed a request. India has come a long way in its battle against COVID-19. New cases are now a fraction of what they were during the peak of its second wave. But this is not without huge, painful costs. Hundreds of thousands of people are dead, millions left in medical debt, and a crushed healthcare system. Salima Shivji takes us there tonight, where the country faces the possibility of a third wave.
The frustration barrels through the bullhorn. These community health workers are weary after months on the front lines, underpaid and underappreciated. COVID hit hard and we were working triple time helping patients, she says, with no extra pay, left vulnerable. Suman Balhara caught the virus at work in India's first wave and is still suffering, struggling to breathe. With a family to help support, she has no choice but to work through the pain. I have to live with it, she says. I take painkillers to make it through every workday. Neelam Jaiswal is also living with the after effects of a severe case of COVID-19. She's home from hospital now, but spends most days in bed hooked up to oxygen. I'm feeling better, she says, but still weak and anxious. The emotional toll is hitting her husband, too. He can't bear to think of where they were a few months ago, the scramble to find a hospital bed and oxygen for his wife.
I was crying at home alone. When I was alone, I cried. What to do, how I can save her.
These days, the worry is over her recovery, getting his wife the right pills, booking her hospital tests as the medical bills pile up.
You don't have insurance?
No, I don't have any insurance at that time. Totally cost more than 25 lakh.
Pushing $50,000 and counting.
Still going on. Medicines are going on, tests are going on right now.
The sheer scale of India's second wave of the pandemic means many are in a similar position. Malini Prasad checks her oxygen levels over and over. She's adjusting to life confined to her home, trying to get her energy levels up.
I ended up spending 90 days in the ICU, which is like one of the longest tenure one could undergo.
It's a dramatic shift from a healthy young mother in her early 40s to a woman fighting to get back to normal, unable to work. The scars of India's brutal second wave are also still fresh at this New Delhi hospital. In April, this ICU was overflowing with patients packed in everywhere, all gasping for breath.
Another couple of hours. So we are struggling.
Dr. Sumit Ray, head of critical care, was constantly on his phone, begging for more oxygen that was fast running out.
We were working non-stop, and in spite of that, there was not enough time.
And it was for a sustained period of
50 days, I keep telling, 50 days of hell, absolute hell.
Today, there are only 2 COVID-19 patients, down from a high of 400. The hospital, like many others, has a new stash of extra ventilators. It's massively increased its supply of oxygen and is getting a new liquid oxygen generating plant to avoid a shortage next time, mirroring the Indian government's push to double the country's production of medical oxygen ahead of a third wave looming this fall.
So I'm hopeful that it won't be as bad, the third phase, but we have to always be alert to the fact that it possibly can.
Alert and prepared, bracing for whatever may come with the next wave. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Delhi.
An amazing day. Meng Wanzhou jets out of Vancouver free after nearly 3 years of detainment, and the 2 Canadian Michaels imprisoned in China are returning home to this country. How did this all happen? Coming up.
Well, if the allegations are substantiated, it's truly a horror story, you know.
Harry Atkinson is in charge of BC's debt collection laws. The horror story he's talking about is a tale told by 6 Canadian pawn a car customers. Susan Nielsen's car was the only big thing she owned since she and her husband split up. The last time she saw it was in July, just after she took out a pawn a car loan for $1,500. Her '81 Chevette was collateral for the loan. Pawn a car put it in storage. A week later, the company's general manager told her, "Sorry, your car's been damaged."
The whole hatchback smashed, like right up to the back seat, all into the back tires, and the doors all ajar and windows broken and everything crunched.
That was almost 2 months ago. Still no word from pawn a car on the fate of her car. Today, when Susan Nielsen went back, the car was gone. We traced it to a locked pawn a car compound nearby.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, God, it looks worse than the first time I saw it.
So today, Nielsen went to pawn a car's office. She says she's been ready to pay back her loan for more than a month, but she wants the car fixed first.
Hi, Mr. Pickering. How are you?
Wonderful. And yourself?
Good. What I'd like to know...
We have no comment. I would like you to leave, please. Thank you.
Well, I have a comment.
If you're welcome to come in.
Pickering told Nielsen he will get her car fixed, maybe by the end of the month. We've talked to 6 pawn a car customers in the last week. Some of the other complaints. A $400 loan cost $1,314 after 2.5 months. A $1,000 loan cost $1,891 after slightly more than a month. And a $75 loan resulted in the seizure and sale of a truck worth more than $5,000. We couldn't get any answers from Canadian pawn a car, and we tried 3 times.
It's impossible now. In fact, I just got in about 10 minutes ago.
So we took the complaints to Victoria, to the man in charge of BC's debt collection laws.
A locate charge of $473.
Now, he says the car was sitting in front of his house.
That's awful.
One problem is, pawnbroker businesses in this province aren't registered or licensed by the provincial government. Atkinson's going to push for the power to regulate these businesses. Meanwhile, there are laws to prevent consumers from being misled or private property from being seized without cause.
We want to know about as many of these as possible. We'll investigate them, and we'll take whatever steps are necessary to protect the public interest.
If the complaints against Canadian Ponacar are true, the ministry can ask for an injunction to close down the company. That's not going to help anybody who's already lost money. But the ministry does say the examples we brought it will help it form some guidelines to regulate Ponacar operations in the future. Roz Oberlin, CBC News, Victoria.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight for you on CBC Vancouver News.
Very concerned. It's a young boy. I can only imagine, what he's dealing with right now.
Hundreds of volunteers fanned out in Squamish to search for a missing 15-year-old boy today. Richie Stelmack was last seen Tuesday night. They've been checking yards, streets, and bushes.
Probably around 12,000 Canadian that was wasted last year in park fees.
Snowbirds in a bind. Canadians who normally head south this time of year to warmer climes are being slowed down by COVID border restrictions. Some claim they've shelled out a lot of money for homes they can't even use.
I also appreciate the Crown for their professionalism and the Canadian government for upholding the rule of law.
Meng Wanzhou is a free person. The Chinese tech executive entered a deferred prosecution agreement with the United States today, avoiding extradition. She's believed to be on a jet now heading to Shenzhen. She was arrested at YVR in late 2018 and spent house arrest at a West Side Vancouver mansion until the deal was reached today.
These two men have gone through an unbelievably difficult ordeal.
And within the last hour, this saga took another dramatic turn. The two Canadian Michaels, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, detained for the past 1,000 days in China, are on their way back to Canada. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced the pair had left Chinese airspace shortly after 6 o'clock our time. He did not specify how the exchange came about or when it was negotiated. A dramatic day across the world. So how did we get here? Katie Nicholson takes a look at how these stories are also intertwined.
All stories have a beginning. This one starts at the Vancouver airport in December of 2018, when Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou was detained and placed in a BC detention center after an extradition request from the U.S. U.S. prosecutors alleged she committed fraud and lied to a Hong Kong banker so her company could work around U.S. sanctions on Iran. 10 days later, China detained Michael Kovrig, a former diplomat who had previously met with Chinese dissidents, and Michael Spavor, a business consultant who arranged travel into North Korea. China said both men were spies.
This has our attention at the very highest levels of our government.
That attention quickly turned to legal action in both China and Canada. Meng was given an ankle bracelet and confined to her Vancouver mansion while she fought extradition. The two Michaels were imprisoned in China. Canadian officials were given limited access to them. In March of this year, the eyes of the world were on the Chinese courts. Diplomats from the US, Germany, the UK, and Australia stood outside to show support for Spavor and Kovrig, who faced back-to-back espionage trials. 5 months later, Spavor was convicted of spying and sentenced to 11 years plus deportation.
Canada condemns in the strongest possible terms Mr. Spavor's unjust conviction after more than 2.5 years of arbitrary detention.
On his 1,000th day of detention, Spavor's family marched 7,000 steps, the same number he walks every day in his cell.
We hoped we wouldn't have to be here, or certainly not in the same situation, but we're here.
But Kovrig is still awaiting a verdict. All while in Vancouver, Meng awaited an October 21st extradition decision. Today's events made that moot.
Katie Nicholson reporting. A crisis at the southern U.S. border and cries for a humanitarian response. Why American border agents are under fire for their treatment of Haitian migrants. That's next. And at 6:45, you're looking at a live shot at Tofino. Pacific Sands Resort, a pleasant day across our south coast. The weekend looking a bit more mixed. Johanna is back with your BC-wide weather forecast after this.
New Brunswick's Carleton County has great big things, like the world's largest covered bridge and sprawling wide open spaces. But not many people know it also has a pretty big boat. Nestled in the tiny farming community of Oakland is Noah's Ark, and what started as a dormitory for a Bible school has become something quite different.
300 feet long, 30 feet wide, 45 feet high, I think. And we run the Bible school 21 years, I believe. After 9/11, it was harder for foreign students to get in, so it just kept dwindling to a place where it was not feasible.
2011 was the last year for the students. So we shifted the dorm rooms into housing, and we found out that it met a niche in the market here at that time, where people perhaps that couldn't afford an apartment on their own but needed housing.
They get everything here for between $450 and $500 a month. That's including heat, lights, water, sewer, everything. So that makes them so they're not homeless.
Yeah, no, I live right in the Ark and the tail end of it.
So you're the last one on the end?
The very last one. I run the rudder.
Nice and quiet, good neighbors, and I do the animals.
A lot of people don't even know that the Ark really exists here. We've never really promoted it as such, except for back 5 years ago, we decided to open up a nonprofit cafe. Someone snapped a picture a couple weeks ago of an aerial view of the Ark and put it on Facebook. And we've been getting calls from Moncton, from Freyton, from all over, just wanting to come and see the Ark. And actually, we had a tour bus call us of 50 people wanting to come and take a tour through the Ark. Well, we're not set up for that, but anybody can come and take a photo and have a sandwich and have soup and homemade cinnamon buns and date squares and homemade donuts. And I think she's cooking corn fritters. Have you ever had a corn fritter?
We stay full. Actually, people call every week, and we don't have anything available. We can probably fill twice that many.
You fill 2 Arks?
Yeah.
Time for the full, complete weekend weather forecast and beyond, province-wide with Johanna Wagstaffe. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for us on the South Coast. Anybody else getting like the good treatment fully?
Yes, the good treatment. The good treatment is draped across pretty much the southern half of the province. And by the time we hit the weekend, everyone across BC will have a tale of the two seasons. We'll see some sunshine. Oh, we got a squirrel fight going on behind me.
Be careful.
Probably anticipating, yes, exactly. You better warn me. Anticipating the switch to fall, I think, because it's coming rapidly. The animals know, don't they? Let me take you through to the current temperatures across the country, where we are seeing fairly seasonal temperatures. It was a muggy week in Toronto, coming down to a 15. Halifax and Charlottetown, some of the warmest temperatures on the east side, 19 and 22 in through Calgary tonight. So fairly seasonal. We are seeing that bump up of temperatures move east of the Rockies over the weekend as well. 27 in through Lethbridge, 29 for Medicine Hat. And yes, some very warm temperatures for the southern interior. We'll see the peak of the heat Saturday and Sunday for the southern interior with that sunshine. Sunday night, those showers move into the Okanagan, you can see those temperatures drop for Monday, and then Monday afternoon, those temperatures moving in with the rain to the Kootenays. So yes, fall is quickly approaching. We've got one more great day until then. 13 as we head into Tuesday for Abbotsford. These cooler temperatures and showers will stick around for most of next week. Had a few people ask me, is that it for the nice days? No, we always see a couple breaks between the systems, but this is when we get into the stormy track. So the door is open to Pacific systems as I take you through this one that'll move in for Sunday. It's an all-day rain event for the South Coast, some gusty winds and cooler temperatures as well. And again, that'll move across the interior. On the flip side, Prince Rupert, look forward to that sunshine you'll get tomorrow, much deserved. 13 in the afternoon, you'll see that sunshine before the day is done. So one more good one. That's where we're going at for the South Coast. Before what a dive. You know, if this forecast doesn't tell you that you should probably try and take advantage of Saturday, I don't know what will. It's there's a lot of pressure on Saturday, so do with that information what you will.
It better show up.
Exactly.
Thanks, Joe.
Roll the sleeves up.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
indeed. Get to work. The U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security says the migrant camp near the U.S.-Mexico border has now been cleared. The announcement comes after close to 15,000 migrants, most of them from Haiti, had gathered there in recent days near Del Rio, Texas, and amid condemnation of the Biden administration's handling of that crisis. Katie Simpson has more from Del Rio.
Armed guards are still protecting the perimeter here around what once was that migrant camp that had been set up underneath the bridge connecting Mexico and the United States. The Department of Homeland Security confirmed today there are no more migrants living under that bridge. They also confirmed some 30,000 people have tried to cross into the United States at this one point alone over the past month. About 12,000 people are still here in the United States. They're having their immigration cases heard. Some are staying at immigration facilities. Others have been processed and are allowed to go and stay with family members. We caught up with some of those migrants who are traveling huge distances to go and connect with their relatives, some going to places as far away as New Jersey, others to Connecticut. Though they are grateful to have the opportunity to seek asylum here in the United States, they would rather take their chances here on American soil than face the dangers back home. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Del Rio, Texas.
It's beginning to look a lot like, what? In September. But there's a good reason you might want to start your Christmas shopping now. We'll explain why after this.
One of the great things about public art is that it's so accessible. You don't have to buy a pass to an art gallery. It's all around us. Hi, my name is Amy Henderson, and I'm the Executive Director of Business and Arts Newfoundland and Labrador. We are launching Explore Art NL. It's a public art app that features 101 works of art across the province. So that includes sculpture, murals, yarn bombings, things like this, located from as far north as Makavik to Corner Brook to Botwood and to St. John's, all across the province. So you can download the app and start browsing. You can flip through and see little thumbnails of all of the art. You can pick one and read about who made it, who commissioned it, where it is, how it intersects with the place in which it's placed. Or you can use the map feature. So you can also take a look, hey, where am I? I need a piece of public art. Where's the closest piece of public art to me right now? Or driving by, I see a sculpture, what is that? Find where you are, find it on the map. There's so much art in this. It's amazing. I have learned so much from being involved in this project. The oldest piece of art was erected in 1901. It's the sculpture down in front of the Railway Coastal Museum for anyone who drives along Water Street in St. John's on a regular basis. That's a sculpture that was created out of a sandstone pillar from the old Anglican cathedral after it was damaged by fire in 1892. Another one that is particularly interesting to me is I didn't know there was a sculpture of the giant squid. And I have young kids, and I think that's going to be my first destination, is to take the kids out to see the giant squid sculpture. People from Newfoundland and Labrador can use the app to explore. You can take a road trip without leaving your living room using the app, and then maybe you'll also plan a road trip and develop an appreciation for the artists in our community and from elsewhere who have been put to work making these amazing creations. We also hope that tourists will find this interesting and come here with a sense of adventure and get out and explore our province. And when you're checking out the scenery, also take a second to check out the public art that brings more to the space. I also hope people will bring fresh eyes for public art as they're driving around and realize that sometimes a beautiful element of a park is actually a piece of art that was designed really thoughtfully, or notice a new mural when you drive by, when you're hanging out in the parking lot of a local business, and appreciate that that's something that was done intentionally to make our city or our province really beautiful.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Join CBC Vancouver's Anita Bath at the virtual Surrey Fusion Festival, an online celebration of food, music, and culture featuring concerts, a cooking challenge, and more. Visit surreyfusionfestival.ca for more info. And don't miss Canoe Culture's Hokomo, a new exhibit at the Vancouver Maritime Museum that honors Indigenous maritime cultures of the past and present. Go to vanmaritime.com to learn more.
If there ever was a year to do your holiday shopping early, I know, calm down. This is it. As Nisha Patel reports, there will be fewer items on store shelves and online in the coming months.
The global supply chain isn't something we usually talk about until it stops working. It's a fragile system, and problems that started because of the pandemic are now rippling around the world. Factories across Asia have seen shutdowns related to COVID-19. There aren't enough workers to load and unload the shipping containers, causing huge backlogs of ships stuck at ports, meaning all those toys meant for store shelves are stuck too. Industry experts say consumers will have to act fast to grab the hottest items.
As some of those items are going to sell out even faster, they're going to be replenished even slower, they're going to be harder to find.
The supply issues could last for months and aren't limited to toys. Video game consoles, books, and clothes will be less available, and shoppers may have to shell out more cash as well. Prices for consumer goods have been rising, and retailers may pass on soaring shipping costs. Big companies like Walmart and Amazon are better able to navigate these troubled waters, but smaller toy stores say these next few months are make or break for their business and urge shoppers to start early.
I would say get your kids to write their Santa Claus letters early and get them in the mail by October, and start researching, because as of October we don't know where our inventory is going to be, and that's coming from our wholesalers.
So while it may seem early to start thinking about your holiday list, it may be the key to avoiding disappointment come December. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
Thank you for joining us this evening. You can always find our news program online at cbc.ca/BC. Our next local news is right here at 11 o'clock after the National with Tanya Fletcher, and each of those programs will have the latest on the return of the two Michaels, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, from China to Canada. They are in the air as we speak, and the return to China of Meng Wanzhou. A 3-year saga is over. Good night.